Welcome back to My View. By now, we've gotten a glimpse as to how the Trump administration intends to reshape America's education system in order to better serve its students. But the lessons aren't exclusive to the classroom. They're also taking place on the battlefield. Under President Trump's leadership, the message to America's enemies is loud and clear. Peace through strength is back. Just last week, a top ISIS leader was taken out in Iraq, a major blow to a terror group that once again attempted a resurgence under Joe Biden's weak presidency. And this isn't an isolated event. Back in February, President Trump ordered a precision strike in Somalia, taking out a senior ISIS planner before he could bring more destruction to the world. But the fight against terrorism isn't limited to ISIS. Iran's influence across the Middle East remains a major threat, fueling terror groups and instability across the region. That's why this administration is making the investments needed to keep our military strong and our enemies in check. No more endless wars, just clear, decisive action when America's security is on the line. The message is simple. If you threaten American lives, you will be handled accordingly. That's peace through strength, and that's leadership. And I got the chance to sit down with National Security Advisor Mike Waltz to break down that mission. This is a kind of an amazing time in American history, and I just want to get your take as National Security Advisor. Where do we stand now with President Trump back in the White House versus where things were from a national security perspective under the last administration?
We've inherited a mess around the world, the largest land war in Europe since World War II, the fighting that has exploded across the Middle East with Iran as the main backer and cancer of instability. Of course, the border that was completely out of control and a humanitarian and national security crisis with our literally probably about a third of our neighbor Mexico being run by these paramilitary cartels. But in just a little over a month, President Trump's leadership, his strength, frankly, the respect and fear that he often and does instill in our enemies has had what we're calling the Trump effect. My job is to pull it all together, help him make those critical decisions, and then once he makes them, to implement. We are going to get this mess cleaned up, pick up where we left off, and keep driving his vision as the peacemaker in chief forward.
Everyone's talking about this looming ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine. The truth is neither side is going to be able to get everything that they want.
Well, it's not going to be easy. President Trump fully appreciates how tough this is, how dug in both sides can be. But he also understands their interests. And it's not in anyone's interest. Look, we hear the critics out there and a lot of chirping going on, but what's their alternative? Years and years and years of more war. People need to understand this is World War I style trench warfare. And to what end? And that's what President Trump asked over and over on the campaign trail. And as both President Putin and President Zelensky said on those historic first calls.
There's the phone call that there's been a lot of conversation throughout the course of the week about between President Trump and President Putin. I know you've had conversations with your counterparts in Russia as well. Anything else you can tell us about that?
Both sides need to stop launching drones and missiles into, I don't know, nuclear power plants and oil pipelines and power grids. One day these will all have to be rebuilt. Let's have that first step of pulling back and pulling down that violence, exchanging prisoners as a good faith first effort. Then we're going to move to maritime. Both countries sit on the Black Sea. They have to trade in oil and gas and grain to literally feed their people and others. That will be the next step. And then the very difficult, what they call the line of control, this trench warfare, which is nearly 800 miles long.
In the Middle East, obviously, there's been discussion about what happens in Gaza. And President Trump put forward an idea of what may happen there.
President Trump wasn't even inaugurated yet. And he said there will be all hell to pay if you keep holding these Americans. And we've since gotten several dozen out. Why? Because once again, our enemies respect and fear the commander-in-chief that sits in that Oval Office. So, look, he also looks at the death and destruction in Gaza. He knows as a builder it's going to take years to clean that up. He's asking a very practical question. How does 2 million people live for a decade in the middle of all of that? And we hear hearts breaking around the Middle East for the Palestinians. As President Trump said, have they ever really been offered? And who wouldn't take their family somewhere else with some decent housing and a place to live? I mean, I think it's just a very practical idea. And then he says, let's stop the definition of insanity of pouring billions in, rebuilding Gaza, just to see terrorists attack all over again.
Where do things stand in our relationship with China? I don't think over the past 4 years people had a real sense of where we were. I think during President Trump's first administration, they knew where the United States stood. But where is our relationship with China right now?
Well, I think a symbol and even a threat from where it was in the last administration was sitting by and watching a spy balloon not just transit the United States, but hover over some of our most sensitive nuclear sites. President Trump realizes this is the competition of this century. China has the economy, the military wherewithal, a Navy that now by numbers is larger than ours, a nuclear arsenal that is tripling everything they're doing in space. But he also knows the way we win is through the strength of our economy and our markets. It's about revitalizing our pharmaceuticals, our steel, our shipyards and shipbuilding. Of course, infusing that culture change of getting back to meritocracy and lethality in our military. That's how you prevent wars. That's how you show strength. Deter with strength in our military and win economically and with our markets.
China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have formed a new Axis power of sorts. I think that's incredibly frightening to a lot of people.
They should sleep well with President Trump in the Oval Office behind the resolute desk and the amazing team he put around him. Reintroducing American leadership in the Western Hemisphere, stopping the most horrific war in Europe since World War II, dealing with the cancer of instability and terror that is Iran, and all options are on the table there. And then working with our allies. If we're talking about the Abraham Accords and not death and destruction in Gaza, then we're executing President Trump's vision, and that's my job to help him quarterback all of that.
But we've still only scratched the surface of what the National Security Advisor is doing to keep Americans safe. Are there any threats to national security that people maybe aren't thinking about every day?
Well, cyber is certainly one. We've just been trying to play better and better defense. I think we need to go on offense. That's how you change behaviors. Let the other side know in certain terms, we can do this to you too, right? There was a program that the Chinese unleashed called Waltz Typhoon. It's literally, we uncovered cyber time bombs on our water, on our critical infrastructure, our grids, our ports. And the Biden administration said, please stop doing that. Oh my gosh. Right? President Trump is not going to put up with this.
He doesn't play that game.
And he doesn't play that game. And you know what? We have an amazing technology sector that we should unleash and really channel for the good of the country and for the defense of the country. But this is why I probably don't sleep as well as we should. But just know under his leadership, we're going to be just fine.
And despite all that may keep him up at night, NSA Waltz is confident in the road ahead. I know that this is a high-stakes position, a high-stress position. How's it been for you? I know you're not getting enough time to work out like you want.
As a combat veteran, as a Green Beret, I always have first and foremost the men and women, that we lost and that are out there on the front line who have to execute the decisions that I and others advise President Trump to make. But he's so clear-eyed in his principles and his leadership. Their families should rest easy, live a great life for their, with their future and their kids. And that's all President Trump wants. I mean, what he sacrificed to do this job. He almost sacrificed his life to do this job and yet kept going. And we're just going to follow his lead.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.